Tannehill is sacked. This time Dane Fletcher.
Hey.
This was the first down sack by Fletcher.
Let's see how you do under pressure. I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me.
Welcome to Fletcher's Unfiltered Podcast, touching on all things fitness, business, and issues in Montana. All right, welcome to episode 2 of the podcast here. We wanted to bring in just an absolute banger, absolute stud of a first guest into the studio.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't even introduced you yet. And so for our number one guest podcast, somebody that is a professional, an athlete, all these things. And so what we came up with is Neil Wilczynski, everybody. Neil, say hello.
Hello.
And Neil is our coaching director here at the Pit. And the reason why Neil is the perfect guy to have on the podcast for our first guest is I want to start with the foundation of the Pit before anything and before going outsourcing and getting athletes and getting anybody else in-house. But secondly, we didn't make Kathy Fletcher and Maureen Wilczynski that proud by our behavior last night in take 1 of the podcast.
Yeah. Bathroom floor did not feel good last night.
So where I'm going with that is we wanted the ability, say we did that stud athlete and we did one take and then they're gone. We wouldn't have been happy with what we came up with last night. We housed this bottle of tequila, the Código, and it started out pretty comical because I wanted to surprise Neil with a really fancy bottle. And by I mean fancy, it's bottom of the shelf right next to Jose Cuervo, and it was garbage. We both took one sip and couldn't handle it anymore. And luckily, we had a backup bottle of Código. What did you rate Código last night?
Honestly, I was so tuned up, I don't even remember.
And that's probably the beauty of where we were at last night. The problem is we're too good of friends on that side of it, and we didn't hold the back, and we didn't have any breaks. And so tonight's gonna be we don't have a choice. We don't have much tequila left, so we're just kind of sipping on the tequila that we have left
And water.
And water, because Neil had a rough night. We all had a rough night last night. I think Ralphie in the back, same kind of situation. Anyways. You know, I touched in the first episode on why I'm starting a podcast. Today, I really want to hit on our programming, what we do, how you analyze it, how we think of everything as a whole culture here, and not only just all of our coaches, but our staff as well. Where I originated was 8.5 years ago when I built the gym. I couldn't have been more fortunate to start the gym out with our coaching director at the time. We didn't even have real labels back then. So maybe as a manager, maybe as coaching director, he was everything. Sean Heron, and couldn't have asked more from the guy. And eventually his time came up where he took the head strength coach position for Montana State, brought him to the national championship last year. Beyond proud of Sean, but the timing just came. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but you, Neil, just came up on your 4-year anniversary, where you're coming up in June with
Feels
us.
like a fucking lifetime.
And, the timing was absolutely perfect. I remember when you submitted your resume, I feel like I got a hold of you relatively soon.
I think it was within 15 minutes.
Desperate.
Yeah.
But I remember vividly that you rubbed off wrong on our current staff, that, Sean was out of the picture, that I had a current staff in-house. You almost rubbed off wrong, and they almost thought you were egotistical.
Probably.
But I didn't see it that way. I saw it as confidence. I saw that you knew your stuff. You could back it. You could support it. You asked questions. And by you coming in and asking questions, it offended people. And it was really, and I know you're a big guy on resumes. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's definitely something I'd get into the nitty gritty with.
And I kind of wanted to fact check you on this. I know I'm speaking a lot right off the bat here, and then I want to dig in on more of picking your brain, but I wanted to fact check your resume because people come in weekly now and drop off resumes, send resumes, and you're usually the first ones to see it and repulsed by these resumes.
Yeah. I mean, like typos, I've had people give resumes with links to their Instagram where we get some shirtless pics, which, I mean, thank you, but like, I don't really want to hire you for that.
And so I fact checked you. You had a phenomenal cover letter, and this is the only fluffing I'm going to do on your end tonight. But the cover letter was good, and it was something along the lines of how you wanted to establish a culture here where people are confident. You inhibit in youth and adult programs a better, more resilient program, respectful. They work hard. It's kind of all the core values we're about to this day. And since you came in, and just to be clear, you didn't come in as the coaching director.
No.
Everything that you have earned here, I would say that as 100% earned. And that's for all of our coaches. You don't just come in and you're hired to be the top dog or a top person at all. I feel like there has to be a point of position. You, if anything, I feel like you were hired to, it was a dog eat dog world back then. And I had to, it was a prove it or lose it situation for you.
Yeah. And I think we're lucky enough that we have a lot of like-minded coaches on that side of things. You know, I think that a lot of people, when they get their first job, or a lot of these kids coming out of college, and this is a conversation I have with my students, is, you know, they get a job and they think, what are you going to do for me? Right. And it's more, well, I'm paying to train you. I'm also taking my time to do the training for you. So I think you just got to go into it and understand, like, there's people investing in you when you get hired, right? And we're lucky enough that we have a staff of people who kind of understand that as well. Like, a lot of our coaches, they do a lot of stuff around here that it's not necessarily in their job description, but they find ways to take ownership of our gym and just find ways to contribute, which makes our jobs way easier.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and I'm excited to even interview like our whole staff eventually and have more conversations one-on-one with you and everybody, because everybody's so valuable in what they bring to the table, and everything's so different. And I know every business is like this, so I'm not sitting here just trying to act like we're so different or anything like that. I just think that the way that we handle ourselves now is night and day different compared to 8.5 years ago. You just, each day you keep stacking chips and you get better and you get better. And to have the same staff for really the same staff for over 3 years now, and you progress together as a unit, and then you just get better and better. And now, I mean, our staff meetings every Monday are phenomenal. It's a presentation. Julia lays up a presentation for us. We go through everybody that we onboarded last week. We have pictures, we have descriptions. How can we help them? How can we modify? We have who we lost, why, who's having kids, right? What am I missing? I mean, we go through the stats on everybody, who's progressing, who's regressing.
Yeah. And then now we've really prioritized the staff education too. You know, that's been a whole new realm of what we've been doing, which is awesome. And now we're getting to the point too where our own staff is doing the educating, which I think is really cool, right? Like, everybody comes in and understands, like, yes, you know, you're the owner, I'm the coaching director, and we're going to teach them things, but they get the opportunity to teach us things, right? We find value in everybody.
And today, more than ever, I think that we're on an uphill battle, especially for youth programming and adult programming. I mean, adults, let's say, not only is this country and the world fatter than it's ever been, and everybody knows that. Every documentary is trying to get you on a eat leaves only diet because of this, right? But there's everything into the new fads that have never come out before. Ozempic being one. Ozempic butts, right? You see somebody that comes in, they lost 100 pounds in the last 6 months, and you're like, all right, yeah. But you've lost your muscle mass, you lost your ass, you lost everything that you had kind of going with you in a positive too. Yeah. So we got to like restructure how that looks. How do you look at these people?
I think we talk about it all the time, right? Everybody wants the magic pill, and people lose sight of what the big picture is. It's great if you're going to lose that weight. And I obviously think there are some scenarios where it can be a useful intervention, but you have to find a way to make it sustainable. And that's really what we believe in. And
that's exactly where, when I was training out on the East Coast, I was with probably my favorite guy that I've ever trained with, my coach at the time, Brian McDonough. And he had a facility out there, a private facility. A lot of pro hockey players trained there, a lot of pro football players, soccer players. And one day I had an issue with the way we were training in the middle of the summer, because we were doing the exact same thing as the women's soccer team. And I went up to Brian and I was like, what the fuck is going on? I'm a middle linebacker. Why am I doing the same thing that the women's soccer team's doing? It's completely different sports. And he slapped me and he goes, idiot. You guys need all of the same fundamentals. Do you not? You need a base level of strength. You need to turn that strength into power, and that power you need to be mobile with, right? And I was like, yeah. He goes, it's the summer. You got a long time to go out on the field and practice sport-specific things on the field, but you can be doing the exact same thing that they are doing. And it was eye-opening to me because all these parents that are coming to us for specific sport training, I was doing the same thing that every other sport's doing when I played in the NFL and we made it to the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what we talk about a lot, is the concept of general development being so important, right? Like when we design our programs at our gym, first of all, we're not training athletes, but obviously the members are going to take that as a dig. So you're all athletes, but we don't have an end goal necessarily, right? There's not the season coming up.
Except for Lucas.
Yeah, except for Lucas.
Lucas, you're not an athlete.
Also, Lucas and I are in a debate. I can totally land a plane if I had to, and I stand on that.
There's no way.
We're putting money on it. And when you don't have that end goal, you got to figure out, well, how can I just create a sustainable program that gets consistent results? And so there's really two main goals to what we do, right? Or two main goals of our program. It's well-rounded development. You need a good base of strength. You need a good base of conditioning. You need to be able to maintain your muscle mass. And then long-term development. I don't really need you to have your best results in 1 month, because what ends up happening is you either have those results and then your technique gets shitty, or you have those results and someone gets hurt. I'd rather see consistent gains over a long amount of time and keep people coming in the door.
Yeah, I think that we've progressed so far in 8.5 years of this business, this gym. When I first started this, it was like very simple principles and a foundation of what I'm doing with this gym. I was like, okay, stole a lot from all these other training facilities around the country. This is how I want it to look. But basically what I want to do is have a really strong culture of good people. How do you have that? I went and I just trained at other CrossFit gyms, other gyms like that. And you look around, everybody's got their shirts off. It's all about me, and all the meatheads walking around looking at themselves. I was like, that is the last thing I ever want to be a part of. I never liked it when I played in the NFL. I'm telling you, when we went in the weight rooms.
I would like if you worked out with your shirt off. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
But when we went in the weight room in New England or in Tampa, everybody's got long sleeve shirts on like this, or hoodies, or your job in the weight room is to get better so you can perform on the field. So when I go in a weight room, and I'm not trying to take digs at other gyms either, it just bothers me when everybody's got their shirts off and like that's their facility to prove things. Yeah. When I value like how our culture is here so much more like dress like professionals, because you're gonna be a professional out of here and you're training in here to be something better outside of here.
Yeah, and a lot of our members are just here to do their own thing. Like we're not, doing bicep curls and looking out the corner of our eye to see like who's watching either, right? I mean, I think the biggest realization for me, I'm turning 30 this year.
Damn.
I know, old man.
Throwing up big numbers. Still
I know.
Can't drink, but big numbers.
I'm going to keep trying though. But when I got married, and my wife, I remember coming home and being like, yeah, I hit this PR on squat or box jump, whatever it was. And she was like, I don't really care. I was like, okay. But like, it was really cool. She's like, you could have 500 pounds on that bar and I wouldn't know the difference. And I was like, great. Like, I don't have to do this shit anymore. And, it doesn't mean that we don't still train hard. But when I kind of took that approach of, all right, I'm just going to make things look really well. I'm going to move things with intent. I'm going to push things at appropriate times. I'm hitting PRs now going into my 30s. Like, I feel like I'm a way better athlete now. It's all because I put the ego aside.
Can you take a second here and just go into our adult program and the whys behind it and the annual phase, the seasonality behind it?
Yeah, like we talked about, there's not necessarily an end goal, but when we take context into consideration, there's different things people need at different times of year. And there's different adaptations we'll hit, but we hit everything at once. We just emphasize things at different times of year. So for example, in January, February, we do body composition. The reason why, we just came off Thanksgiving, we came off of Christmas, everyone's got their leftover Halloween candy sitting around. Everybody just kind of becomes a little bit of a piece of shit. So we spend that time trying to lean out. We focus on that a little bit. And then, March, April, for example, we just leaned out. Now we want to build some muscle mass, right? We've got the ability to handle volume now, like sets, reps, things like that. And now we just start adding load to that, right? So still hitting higher reps, but now there's a little bit more of a weight component. So we try and put muscle on. Spring break's coming up. And then after that, we go into strength. And the reason why is we spend that time building muscle, but our body needs to learn how to use that muscle. And that's a really important factor. So then what would that be? March, April. So May and June, we hit strength. We test at the end of that on things like squat, bench, deadlift. And then we kind of recycle that for the second half of the year. We'll go back into body composition. We go back into hypertrophy. We go back into strength. And then we just change some of the variables within that, or kind of how we tier each adaptation that we're going for. And I think the reason why it works well is, I think where a lot of programs fail is people don't have that plan, right? Like, it's one of the best quotes I've heard in strength and conditioning is, any idiot can make another idiot sweaty, right? Like, people can write hard workouts and that's great, but if you're not establishing something for the long term and planning ahead, then you're not going to get results. The two biggest pitfalls that you see when people write training programs is, number one, they have way too much random variation. And some of that can be, you got someone who's a business executive and they go do their own workouts. They're not spending their time writing it. So you just guess every single day. And when you're varying things like that all the time, you're never actually stressing yourself on movements, right? If I do a movement week 1 and then week 2, I do a completely different movement. Well, I just spent week 1 learning that movement. I didn't really get to load it. And that's why we do our phases. You have 4 weeks to really master something and really push yourself on it. And then we progress to something that it's different, but there's still some consistency with it. We're not just going to, again, go into something completely random again, because we need to build our capacity within those movements. And the other pitfall that you see is when people write programs is they don't establish KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. You have to have objective measures to show you, did this work? Did this not work? Or you need to establish those, because one of the basic principles of training is progressive overload. I need to know what I can do to get better next week. Is it adding more weight? Is it adding more reps? You have to track things, bar speed, power output, all those things. If you're not tracking and you're guessing all the time, you're not going to get results.
And I would say that one of the beautiful things about how we program as a staff is there's so many inputs coming in from all of our coaches, everybody with their own backgrounds. You have, Shannon with bow hunting, you have Mike with soccer, you have all these different rationales of the seasonal training and why. And you have different coaches, almost saying like, hey, we need to prepare for ski season coming up. We need to get ready for preventative injuries like ACLs, shoulders, hips, things like that. Okay, well, then you have other coaches vouching for, okay, we also need to prepare for bow hunting season coming up in the fall. So we keep an eye on that. And there's also a right time to get numbers in the fall. And if it's not measured, it can't be managed. It's a famous quote that should 100%. Be used more often, right? Yeah. And so you got to measure it at some point. We measure in the spring, we measure in the fall. Sometimes it's different things, but you got to keep a pulse on it, so then you know where you are on the year-to-year basis. And
when it comes to consistency too, especially, people who aren't necessarily super driven for training, and you got to get them in the door, being able to show them how they got better, that's a really rewarding thing. I think people forget that showing progress is a great motivator.
Correct. Can we end it on the adult programs? Because we're going to hit this so much, and we're going to meet a lot on the adult programs and get more intricate on the whys, right? Let's just touch real quick on our youth training, why we do it, how we approach it. I just want to touch a little bit real quick on, it drives me absolutely bonkers when parents come up to me or call about needing to make their kids faster and we need to get them sprinting right away. Elaborate on that, will you?
Yeah, I think that parents come in with the best intentions,
Absolutely.
And one of the worst things though is the internet has put all these things out there of, you need to be doing your speed ladders. You need to be doing, this is the one speed program that's going to make your kid amazing. But really, when we talk about speed and power, that's force into the ground. If your kid can't even produce force to begin with, then we're not going to be able to make them faster, right?
And force comes from
strength.
Thank you.
It's the tide that raises all ships. And here's a good example of that. If you squat 100 pounds and you weigh 100 pounds, think about moving your own body weight around. So like a cross-country runner, we get them stronger. That's going to help their endurance. They're going to be more efficient. Hey, you want your kid to put on muscle? Well, that means that we need to actually introduce some load like we talked about. Well, your kid's pressing 5-pound dumbbells. That's not going to give us enough of a stimulus to cause that growth. So really, we have to start with strength first. It is so important.
And that's what drives me nuts. Because, and like you said, parents have the right intentions. And I wish more people understood this. That's why I want to get this out on the first podcast, have you on and hit this so everybody can hear it, that 99% of kids, we did so many testing, jump mat profiles, sprint profiles, everything the first 4 or 5 years that we started this, because I was just truly interested. What do these kids need to become faster? And we did it when I had a contract with Montana State and got them to the national championship. With all this testing we had, what I kind of recognize is until somebody's realistically a sophomore in college, the majority, almost over 90% of kids need that base level of strength. They got to get stronger before you can turn strength to power, power to speed. So if you don't want your kids to go through surgeries, injuries, ACLs in the future, they have to have that base level of strength, in particular girls.
100%. And I think it's important, to say too, it doesn't mean we don't train speed, right? But really what we teach is positions. A lot of kids don't understand the positions that they need to be getting in, and they don't own them. So like Mike, one of our coaches here, has a really great thing that he talks about when we train for speed initially is you've got to exaggerate everything, right? We really exaggerate things like shin angles and arms, right? How we're using our arms, because if we do that, then all of a sudden it's going to be easier to make it second nature. But if you don't understand even how to get in the right position to accelerate, doesn't even matter, right? So we spend a lot of time on positions. And then the other thing we spend time on is building the brakes. Like a lot of these kids don't know how to decelerate. People forget that because there's no point building the gas if you don't have good brakes first.
Correct. And I think what you, and I'm not just gaslighting you, it's all of our coaches here. I think what they do a really good job of, just as a guy that just observes and watches how our coaches communicate, not only with our kids, but our adults, it always starts with understanding who that person is, who that athlete is, before just jumping to conclusions on what they need. Kind of like I said, I think in the first episode is you can't speak in absolutes. I think you brought that up in the staff meeting. I couldn't agree more on that you cannot just, write a program for Sarah here that's had 2 kids, and it's going to be the exact same program for Kate that also had 2 kids. You don't know what their hormones are doing. You don't know where they're at. You don't know how much the lack of sleep they're getting. You don't know their diet's like. There's so many variables. So you got to get to know who that person is, who that athlete is. You got to know how to almost break them as a young athlete before you can build them up and see what is their breaking point, right?
Yeah, and you got to be a chameleon. Different kids respond to different ways of motivating. If you don't know who you're working with and you don't take that time, like we've said this quote before, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I need to figure out what is driving you first. Then I can really hammer that.
Yeah. So a lot of parents, ask me, what do I do with my kids? Because they know that I make my kids work out with me. They're 6 years old. I've made them work out with me for the last year and a half. We started when they were 5. They go down in the basement. It's all body weight stuff. It's not child abuse. Maybe it's on the line of it, I guess, according to what they think. But
and Dane's on a list now.
Yeah, it's such simple stuff. It's a new thing every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They haven't progressed off that for a year and a half. It's such simple stuff. It's wall sits, it's squats, it's push-ups, it's things like that. But it's my time as a dad to spend time with the kids and get a better understanding where they are and how can I intervene in their life to help progress them. For example, since I believe they were 4, I hit them with the Fletcher 4 every morning on the way to school. Now we do it after our workouts. What are the 4 things I expect out of you? They always repeat it. Just work hard, be respectful, be tough, and always have fun. If you do those 4 things, I'm a pretty damn happy parent, and I'm proud of whatever you do. I don't care if you go pro. I don't care anything. It's just what I can instill in my kids at a young age. I'm trying to instill confidence into them. So doesn't matter the scene, wherever they end up, but if they can get in front of their class and have confidence and give a speech, they're tenfold ahead of where I was at when I was their age, because I couldn't get in front of anybody and give a speech. So if I could give them a little confidence without being a bully, without being a jerk to other kids, that's all I can ask for.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I think where our current state of kids is, they don't have good coping skills. I think it's really hard for them to understand how to handle adversity. And I think that's where those relationships are important too, because once that kid trusts you, you're actually able to tell them you're not meeting expectations, or when you do tell them they're doing a good job, like they understand that you do mean it. But really, I think that kind of leads into, we talk about training youth and sport specific. There's really only 3 things to me that are sport specific, and they're kind of my 3 principles. So they're not as fun as the Fletcher 4, but Zach Singleton, my old coaching director, this was the culture we established, and I still do it to this day. It's called EAT, right? Effort, attitude, toughness, relentless effort in everything you do, right? Can you make everything you do purposeful? Whether it's in the weight room, making every single rep count. When you go to practice, are you practicing like you play? Do you have full intent in every drill? Attitude, can you be selfless and have a positive attitude? Because when you look at good athletes, they're really good athletes, but they make everyone else around them better too. And then toughness, being mentally, physically tough. My biggest thing that I teach the kids from day one is, can you pay attention to detail once you get tired, right? Everything goes into fatigue of, can you pay attention to the details when you get tired? Can you still communicate? Those are the things that make the biggest difference. And we instill that from day freaking one.
Yeah. I mean, that was my my game plan going into every game in college football is playing a D end. I'm just going to wear them out in the first half, but third quarter, fourth quarter, really the fourth quarter, I was in such good shape. I knew that I could almost embarrass them on the line because they're wore out. So I'm just trying to survive. I'm not trying to get sacks necessarily in the first half. I'm trying to survive and wear them out in different ways. Come third and fourth quarter, I can break them down because I'm in better shape. I'm stronger. And I just trained so goddamn hard in college that I knew that even when we played Texas M, I'm going to break them down in the fourth quarter. And it happened. And it works. And the more you can instill that in your kids. And here's a plug, because we don't have any sponsors. I guess the Pit has to sponsor everything right now. Which, by the way, to go back to the tequila, I've had 2 tequila companies reach out to me. And we just haven't pulled the trigger yet on where we're going with that. But we're making, damn, that was loud.
I know.
we're making moves. In the meantime, we'll just keep rating. We'll keep rating some tequilas. Maybe not the shitty one that we had last night.
I don't know. This one's pretty good. The burning in my esophagus is making me not enjoy it as much from the gut rot. But
from throwing up last night.
Yeah.
But so if anybody wants, since I'm going to give a shout out to the Pit, we're starting an app. All the kid workouts part of the app will be for free. It's just more so we want to give something for parents that do with your kids. You can do it literally in a yard. You can do it anywhere. It's all body weight stuff. And then there's a progression to it as well. My kids still, after a year and a half of doing it, haven't hit the progression yet. They work hard. It's cool watching them just kind of transform and be more confident in the mornings. And also it's just part of our routine now. It's not like they don't give me a hard time. It's not like, like when we first started, it was, they fought it. Now it's just, all right, boys, let's go. You go knock it out, and it's part of your routine. If you can start that routine with your kids now, imagine what they're going to do when they hit college, when they're going to be adults. They're just going to wake up, go take care of themselves, be a better person, and then they can do the other things, provide for their families, take care of whatever else they need to take care of. But you got to take care of yourself first. So if you instill that in your kids early on, I'm telling you, it's going to be better off. I don't know how it's going to shake out for my kids, but I hope it does that. And more so, it'll be on our app. It'll be completely free. There's things where you got to make money on to make it make sense. This is one of those things where you don't, because you want everybody to have it and everybody to start as soon as they can working out with their kids. And a lot of parents just literally don't know what to do with their kids. It is simple, especially when you start, but there is also a progression to it. And there's a way to, once they hit a wall sit for a minute or something, there's a little bit more you can do. Yeah.
I think too, it's just the foundation for kids is learn the basics and learn how to execute them at a high level. That's it. They work for a reason.
Mm-hmm. That I'm not trying to always go back to the NFL and stuff, but fuck, the amount of stuff that Belichick did on the basics. We did 5-on-5s to start every practice, 1-on-1s to end every practice. You don't get any better unless you just compete against one person in football's sake. You don't get any stronger and tougher unless you go against a whole O-line and just beat the living shit out of each other. It teaches you the basics. It teaches you the fundamentals. There's no secrets to how we ran those. It's going to be a run uphill on you. You have to take on Logan Mankins, Matt Light, these guys, these are Steve Neal, these real dudes. That you're just eventually you're going to have to get low and you're going to have to learn how to hit them better and be more accurate every single day. And that's kind of how we instill our youth programs and even our adult programs. You don't have to outthink it. You literally have to show up. I mean, I show up and I do our program every day. I don't do my own. One, because I don't have the time to program for doing my own. And it doesn't even make sense because as a whole, as a staff, we put so much time into this program that why would I go out of my way because I want one extra thing out of it? I'm well-rounded. I sit between 10 to 11% body fat year round. There's no reason to change it up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, now maybe we can get out of third place in our hockey league.
Yeah, by the way, we just literally got off the ice in our men's league hockey, which is a serious deal.
We did shower though. It's a very important part of it.
Yeah, it's I made 2 games in the last 2 months, so I'm proud of myself.
You did so good.
Yeah.
You did so good. Got a little chippy.
I think that just to wrap up episode 1, I think this is great. I'm excited to continue the conversation and get more deep on the reasons why and get more deep on our other staff as well and bring in Kaylin, our dietitian in-house, and bring in some other, backgrounds of our coaches and the whys. We have so much experience, so much knowledge in these walls. Bring in some members that bring so much to the table as well.
Again, not Lucas.
Lucas might get a shot because he can fly a plane, and you, my friend, cannot fly a plane.
I didn't say I have to fly it. I got to land it.
Oh, yeah.
And again, not everyone's going to survive, but it will be on the ground.
Yeah. And, I appreciate you coming back after the first take last night. Again, we got a little carried away.
Well, it's because you're paying me.
2 kids, not kids, 2 grown adults take in too much tequila, and it wasn't a good outcome. It wasn't what we wanted. We literally had kind of an agenda that we wanted to hit. We didn't hit any of it. We just started rambling. We started talking like we do in meetings and just bullshitting. And then after an hour of the bullshit, we're like, that ain't good. Like, maybe we got to rethink this one.
No, it was the next morning we said it wasn't good. Last night we're like, oh, fuck yeah, we killed it.
No. I get a text that just said, I threw up 8 times.
I got a talk. I didn't even get yelled at.
Yeah, so this is us growing up. Our mothers could be proud of us tonight. We sipped on tequila and we were adults only because of the situation we were in from last night.
Yeah, and we went to church today, and then we worked at the homeless shelter for a little bit. I mean, we're contributing.
We got in fights at hockey because we're still not mature.
Yeah.
Anyways, I appreciate it, and episode 2 is a wrap. Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man.